Lyra had spent so many years inside the grand fortress of Carthos that she had forgotten what the open sky looked like. The fortress stood like a dark mountain, wrapped in metal and fire, and its master, Lord Vornak, ruled everything he saw. He was feared across 3 systems, a name that even soldiers spoke in whispers. To him, everyone else was an object to be used and thrown away. Lyra was his personal servant. Every morning before the twin suns rose, she polished his armor until it shone like blood. She stood behind his throne while he planned new wars and watched the faces of the conquered. She was not allowed to speak unless spoken to. Every move she made had to be perfect. The smallest mistake could mean punishment. Yet behind her calm face she carried a mind sharper than any blade. She remembered every word he said, every code she heard, every guard's routine. She never let him see the tiny spark of rebellion that still lived inside her. For years she dreamed of freedom but never dared to imagine it could happen. The idea of leaving Carthos felt like thinking of breathing on a planet without air. Then one day the universe changed. A small human cargo ship crashed near the fortress after being pulled from orbit. Only one survivor was found, a young mechanic named Ethan Cole. Lyra saw him for the first time when guards dragged him into the Great Hall. He was bruised, dirty, but his eyes burned with defiance. Most captives begged for mercy, but this human stood straight even in chains. When Vornak mocked him, Ethan answered in a voice full of anger, though he did not understand the alien tongue. The translation drone stuttered, unable to match his emotion. Lyra stood beside the throne, translating the tyrant's words as ordered. She watched Ethan carefully. Something about him felt different. He did not look around for pity. He did not lower his eyes. He looked at her once, and in that single glance she felt something she had not felt in years. Someone was seeing her as a person, not a servant. That night she was ordered to bring food to the human's cell. The guards laughed, saying humans were weak, but Lyra moved silently down the cold corridor. When she entered, Ethan lifted his head. His voice was quiet, cautious. "You understand me?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. "A little," she whispered. It was the first human word she had spoken. They talked in fragments, mixing languages. He told her he had been fixing cargo engines before the attack. She told him nothing about herself, but he guessed enough. "You don't belong here either," he said softly. Those words struck her heart like a spark hitting dry wood. She almost dropped the tray. Nobody had ever said she belonged anywhere. Over the next few days she kept finding excuses to visit. She pretended to check the restraints, to deliver messages. In truth, she wanted to hear him speak. His voice reminded her of warmth. He spoke about simple things: rain on earth, blue skies, the smell of coffee. Each description felt like a story from another life. Then came the night of the storm. Carthos was hit by magnetic lightning that turned the sky green. Sensors failed, and even the guards took shelter. Lyra saw her chance. She went to the cell and unlocked it with the code she had memorized years ago. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. She looked into his eyes and said, "Because I am tired of serving monsters." They ran through the tunnels beneath the fortress. The air was thick with smoke and the roar of thunder outside. Sirens began to wail. When a blast door closed behind them, Lyra was thrown to the ground and cut her leg. Ethan turned back immediately, pulling her to her feet. "We're not leaving you," he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. No one had ever said "we" to her before. They reached the hangar where old patrol ships were kept. Lyra used her access codes to open one. The ship's systems were ancient, but Ethan's human hands moved quickly over the controls. Outside, the storm raged like the planet itself wanted them gone. As the engines roared to life, a squad of guards burst in, shouting in the alien tongue. Ethan slammed the throttle. The ship lifted, scraping the hangar roof before shooting into the sky. Lightning cracked across the horizon, blinding them. The hull shook violently. Alarms screamed in both languages. Lyra gripped the edge of the console, eyes wide with fear and wonder. "We're free," she whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He was fighting to keep the ship steady. But when he glanced at her, she saw a faint smile. They broke through the clouds and into the blackness of space. For the first time, Lyra saw the stars not through a window, but with nothing between her and the infinite. Tears filled her eyes, not from pain or fear, but from the shock of being alive. She turned toward the man beside her, the human who had risked everything without even knowing her name. Ethan looked at the trembling figure next to him and said quietly, "Hold on." We're going home. Lyra closed her eyes as the stars blurred into streaks of light. Somewhere behind them, the Tyrant would wake and send hunters to chase them. But in that single moment, surrounded by the silence of space, Lyra woke up to the sound of engines humming softly around her. The light inside the small ship flickered blue and white as the stars outside stretched into long shining lines. For a few seconds, she did not know where she was. Her last memory was the storm, the guards, the fire, and Ethan shouting something over the noise. Then she remembered they had escaped. She sat up slowly, her legs still aching from the wound. Ethan was sitting near the control panel, his face pale but calm. His jacket was torn and one of his hands was wrapped in cloth. He looked at her with a tired smile. "Hey, you're awake," he said. His voice was gentle. Lyra blinked at him, still trying to believe that a human had helped her, had risked his life for her freedom. "How long have we been flying?" she asked softly. "About 12 hours, Ethan said. We're still in hyperspace, heading toward the edge of the system. Once we're out, I'll try to find a safe route to Earth." Lyra looked out the small window. The stars flowed like rivers of light. She had seen them before from the fortress, but they had always felt distant, like something forbidden. Now, for the first time, they looked alive. Ethan noticed the way she stared at them. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said quietly. She nodded. "I used to watch them every night," she whispered. "I thought if I looked long enough, one of them would take me away." For a long time, they said nothing. The silence between them was strange but peaceful. Ethan adjusted some controls while Lyra tried to rest again, but her mind would not stop. What if Vornak was already chasing them? What if they were caught? She turned toward Ethan and asked, "Do you think he will come after us?" Ethan's eyes darkened. "He'll try," he said. "But we'll be long gone before his ships find our trail. You helped me escape his prison, Lyra. Now it's my turn to make sure you stay free." The words felt warm in her chest. No one had ever promised her protection before, but she could see the exhaustion in his eyes and the fading power lights on the control board. She moved closer and studied the blinking red symbols. "The ship is old," she said. "It needs repairs," Ethan sighed. "Yeah, I know. The reactor's unstable. We'll have to land somewhere soon or it'll overheat." He pulled up a map of nearby systems. Most were under Carthonian patrol. One small world caught his attention, a quiet mining planet named Hespera 9. "It's barely inhabited," he said. "We could hide there for a while." Lyra helped him check the coordinates. She knew enough about Carthonian tech to bypass the ship's identity code, making it harder for enemy sensors to track. Her hands moved fast, graceful, precise. Ethan watched her with quiet admiration. She was no longer just a frightened servant. She was focused, capable, determined. Hours later, the ship dropped out of hyperspace near a dusty brown planet. The sudden jolt threw them forward. Sparks flew from the console. Ethan cursed under his breath, fighting the controls. "Hold tight!" he shouted. The ship shook violently as they entered the planet's thin atmosphere. Lyra gripped the seat, her heart pounding. For a moment, it felt like the fortress again. The noise, the fear, the helplessness. But then she looked at Ethan, and his steady expression gave her courage. They crashed on the edge of a barren desert, sliding across the sand until the engines died. Smoke filled the cabin. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. Then Ethan laughed weakly. "Well, we're alive," he said. Lyra looked at him and smiled for the first time in years. "Yes," she said softly. "We are." They climbed out of the broken ship. The air was dry and smelled of metal and dust. Above them, the sky was a pale gold. There were no signs of life, only wide hills and distant rocks. Ethan opened a small kit and checked the damage. "We'll need water, food, and something to patch the engine," he said. "We might be here a while." Lyra followed him as they explored the area. She moved quietly, scanning for danger. When she found a small cave near a rocky ridge, they decided to rest there for the night. Ethan built a small fire using the ship's power cells. The soft glow lit the walls, painting them in orange light. Lyra sat beside him, her hands around a cup of warm liquid he had prepared. She had never sat by a fire before. In the fortress, warmth was only for the powerful. The heat felt strange but comforting. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly. Her voice trembled slightly. Ethan looked at the flames. "Because you helped me first," he said. "And because no one deserves to live in chains." She stared at him, trying to understand that kind of kindness. "On Carthos," she said, "helping someone like me was death." Then it's a good thing I'm not from Carthos, he said with a small smile. The wind outside howled softly against the rocks. Lyra watched the shadows move along the walls and felt something she had never known: peace. Yet deep in her mind, she still feared the tyrant's reach. She knew Vornak would not stop until he found her. As the night grew darker, Ethan adjusted his jacket and leaned back against the wall. "We'll fix the ship tomorrow," he said. "Once it's running, we'll head for Earth. You'll like it there, no masters, no tyrants, just people living their lives." Lyra listened to his words and closed her eyes. Earth sounded like a dream she could almost touch. The thought of walking under an open sky without fear made her heart ache. She whispered, "I want to see it." Ethan smiled faintly, though his eyes stayed open, scanning the darkness beyond the firelight. "You will," he said. "I promise." Outside, the wind swept over the desert and carried the sound of the dying storm into the night. Inside the cave, a human and an alien sat side by side, two strangers from different worlds finding hope in each other's silence. Lyra did not know what the future would bring, but for the first time, she believed there could be.